How's it going, everybody? I recently put out a YouTube video asking all of you, the viewers, whether you're subscribed or not subscribed, basically asking all of you what it would be that you would want to see on the channel. Normally, I'm in charge of the content and recording and producing and then uploading it. Hence, my channel. Well, basically, what I wanted to know was, what do you guys want to see? And I got quite a bit of feedback, and a lot of it was really good. Some stuff I can't do because I'm not a programmer, and I don't do any scripting. So you're kind of out of luck when it comes to that type of stuff. But some of the stuff that I did receive was really good feedback in regards to what I'm running at home. Because that's a lot of the stuff that I do, I teach off of my home server, which is over my right-hand shoulder. You can see it. I do a lot of my my demos and stuff like that from there. That server gives me a boatload of opportunities to teach things. So there are limitations though as to what I can and cannot do. So, for instance, I can do a lot of routing and switching. I can do a lot of security. I can do a lot of service provider. I can do a lot of VMware. I can do a lot of Microsoft. And I plan on going through those technology areas over time. Now, granted, that's a lot of technology I just mentioned, and I'm one person. There's 24 hours in the day. I like to sleep, so I might be up 16 hours a day. I'm also married with 2 kids, so I want to spend time with my family. So, with that being said, I don't have time to spend all of my time, working or studying. So, with that being said, one question I got that wasn't to my YouTube channel, or one suggestion I should say, wasn't to my channel, but it was to my Google email. And the gentleman that has been following me for some time now wanted me to break down the server. How do I go about planning a series? How do I go about setting it up to where making sure that all of the things that are supposed to work actually work and stuff like that. So I decided to go ahead and put this video together. So the other thing too is, since this video is going to be only on my YouTube channel, I thought you guys might like to see me. So at least you have a webcam view of me talking to you guys as I go along. So I felt like that would help, makes it more personal. So let me know if that's cool with you guys, if you care, don't care, what have you. So the first thing that we want to talk about is the server. The server itself is actually pretty simple. If we click over here on this thing, let me pull up my pen pad here, and I will start to break down some of the details to the server so you guys have an understanding of what's going on here. So let me grab this. So as you can see right now, over here in the general tab, or the general section here, you're going to have an area that is laid out like this. Basically, this is the platform. It's an IBM series. It doesn't tell you specifically what model server I'm running off of. It just tells you the platform. So in this case, it's an IBM. So basically, I'm running off of a 3650 M2, basically a second generation of this platform. So they have different newer models out there. Like, I think the 3950 is the newer stuff. At least that's what I'm seeing on eBay when I go to look at new servers and stuff like that. So that's where I'm going out with that. In total memory, I have 64 gigs of RAM of memory, and I believe that is 4 DIMMs by whatever, 4 times 16, I think. 4 times 16. Yeah, that'd be 64. So that's where that would come into play. So I have 4 gig DIMMs, 16 of them, and then this is my processor. So I have an Intel Xeon CPU X5560 2.8 gigahertz. So that's how that works. Now, that's all well and great. Now, you might say, okay, how did you find it? Well, eBay. Now, I'm here in the U.S., and eBay is pretty readily available. So you can go on eBay and look up whatever server platform you're looking for. Normally, when I do a eBay search, if you look over my right shoulder here, which actually this is my right, actually you can not see the server sitting behind me. It's actually hidden behind my chair. But basically, what I do is I go out and I Google. It's real simple. I rack server. That's supposed to be an R, and it's going to be 128 gigabytes. Now, you might have to do, depending on where you live, depending on your demographic, so your geographic location, you may not get the same deal I might get. depending on the seller, it might cost you a lot more to ship it to you than it would to me because I'm here in the States. So, and I realize some of my viewers, well, I think about half of my viewers are in the, I don't know what the correct the correct term, but I'm going to say the Middle East region, so Pakistan, Iraq, India, that region of the world. So so that's where most of my viewers come from. So, and I do appreciate all my viewers. So with that being said, that is where this is my next server buy. Okay, so I have that in play, and that's where I'm going to be going to buy my next server. Now, when I go to find a server, there's a couple things that I look at. First one is going to be capacity. The capacity that I look for is going to, and I look at the capacity is based off of what I'm wanting to test on the box. So my original goal with this guy was to get the 64 gigs of RAM, and this is prior to me passing the CCIE written exam. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to run 20 CSR 1 kV routers, which are these guys right over here. So I had the ability to run up to 25 of them, but that was pretty much tapping me out on RAM. I couldn't do anything higher, anything more than that, and I was sitting right around this area right here for total utilization all the time. So it was a lot. I mean, it was just like, it was killing me, and you could tell the server was having to work because when I had them all spun up, the room that I'm sitting in is a bedroom, and it just started to get really, really hot. So, you know, I ended up having to open a window and put in a fan to try to blow the hot air out. And actually, my wife's brother had an ingenious idea of putting in a window-based fan that was directional, so I could switch the direction. It could exhaust instead of intake. So in the wintertime, I can intake, in the summertime I could exhaust the hot air out to the outside. Makes it much simpler. And I don't know if you guys can see this, but I'm going to circle it here on the monitor. This guy right here, that's actually a insulation in the window to prevent cold and hot air from coming in. But that's what's up with that. So that was the initial goal. In addition to that, one of the things that I wanted to do was, you know, I'm a VMware engineer. Okay, if you hadn't seen my channel, I also do a lot of VMware. I'm also I hold a VCP 5 in data center virtualization. Now, with that being said, I also want to test out a bunch of virtualization stuff. Now, there's a couple different ways you can take a look at that. You can install ESXi directly onto the server here, right? And because you can run ESXi virtually, so you could run, say, you know, as many ESXi hosts as you wanted to. Normally, when I'm setting up a lab, I do four hosts. When I say host, I mean ESXi virtual machines. I do 2 by Windows servers, WinServer, which is usually running 120.12 R2, and one is the domain controller, the other one is vCenter. Okay, and then I run 1 by I'm just going to call it SAN, which is actually OpenFiler. I run one OpenFiler, and OpenFiler runs on 1 gig of RAM, and that provides all of the SAN connectivity for the shared storage for the hosts. And then from there on, it's usually 1x admin computer, which is there installed, and it's usually got 2 gigs of RAM, and that allows me to be on the domain. And all these guys are domained, right? So I have these, was that 2, 4, that's 6, 7, 8 devices that I run inside the environment, give or take. Let's try to think, is there anything else that I'm missing? Eventually, down the road, when you get farther along in your prep, you'll have to install one more server. So you'll have to one up that to 3 for VMware Update Manager, because that cannot run on the vCenter server and it cannot run on a domain controller. You have to run that on a regular Windows server. And that's right, the other one is 1 by the VCSA, which is the VMware server vCenter server appliance, which is a Linux-based app appliance that you can download from VMware's site in case your environment doesn't have any Windows devices or Windows servers. You don't have to burn a Windows license to install a server to put inside of your environment. You can just run the appliance standalone. So that's usually my deployment for VMware. That gave me also a lot of thought. Okay, well maybe I want to go out and maybe I want to prepare for. Let me switch over my color to red here. Maybe I want to do the MCSA, Microsoft Certified Solutions Associate. And I'm actually studying for that as well, but I haven't actually kicked it off yet because I'm going to be taking my CCIE lab here very soon. And I do appreciate all the well wishes for that. I did get a lot of feedback on that, so I do appreciate that as well. I'm going to be taking the R2 test, and that's going to be the 70-410, 11, and I think 12 is what the codes are. So that's the goal for that one, but that's not going to be happening anytime soon. The other thing that I'm studying for is the CCIE, the SPV4 exam. And I happen to be a glutton for punishment. I like Cisco, I like routing, so service provider is a good thing. And if you hadn't noticed, I have 8 CSRs and I have 4 XR routers here. These are all OVAs that you can download from Cisco's site. That's where I got them from. And I'm also going to be running a handful of other routers that I was able to get working externally to VMware. And that'll be how I get. They're actually iOS V L3 images that I was able to get running. I found a virtual machine online, the VMDK file, and I was able to get that installed inside of a virtual machine and go from there. So that's how I'm going to be doing service provider. I'm actually, I haven't actually officially kicked that off yet, so I don't have any training ready or anything like that, but it is out there. So that was kind of the plan for the server. So all the different things you can possibly think of, and that's not even including everything, because then if I wanted to say learn Citrix, I could go and start learning Citrix and virtualize it. So this platform gives me a lot of capabilities when it comes to my preparation for things. Whether I want to learn, say for instance, I wanted to learn ASA. I could run ASAV inside of VMware and test that out and learn how to do packet filtering and stuff like that. And you can also, like I said, with the Microsoft platforms, you can also do other things. You can't run Hyper-V on here. Actually, I can't say that. It's 6.0 is a little bit different. That's the version that I'm running over here is 6.0. So it really varies on how you set stuff up. One of the other things that I tried getting working here that was working was Viral. I'm not a fan of Viral, and let me tell you why. Viral is good for those that don't want to spend a ton of time trying to get what I've got working. Now, most people don't have the level of VMware understanding that I do. And I'm not saying I'm an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm saying that I'm stronger than most. So for being a network engineer by trade, I have a lot of server and virtualization experience to go with that. So a lot of times when people are trying to do Viral, they want to just download the virtual machine from Cisco's website, install it, follow the breakdown on the Viral dev site, and then get it running. The problem I have with Viral is I want to take up the data center track after I pass my CCIE. So that'll be happening very, very soon. The drawback to that, however, is when you're dealing with the data center track, what are the 3 things you need to have in order to be able to study data center, whether it's a CCNA, CCNP, or CCIE? Well, for one, you need to know Nexus. And not just anything in Nexus, you need to know the 7K. Actually, let's actually erase that real quick. Give me 1 second here while I erase. You need to know the Nexus. That's a little bigger than I was anticipating it to be. You need to know Nexus, you need the 7K, the 5K, and the 2K. So this will be the parent switch, this will be an AG switch, and this will be the FEX, right? So I have a basic understanding of how data centers work. So you also need to know UCS, as well as what else? Storage, right? So storage, right? Well, the thing with VMware, when I was studying for my VCP, I had to know a lot about storage. Whether it was file level or file. This is why I don't like to write. I like to just type things out. File and block. Where file level is going to be like NFS, or network file storage, or file system, sorry. And block is going to be like iSCSI, or fiber channel. Something like that, to where you're virtualizing, or you're taking hard drive space from somewhere else and making it look like it's directly connected wherever you're seeing it, even though it's going over there's a network in between you and somewhere else. So that's the general idea for that. Now, with that being said, that's where you need to learn data center. Data center comes into play. You need to know these three platforms, these three different technology domains. Unfortunately, Viral's Nexus platform, not there yet. Let me explain what I mean by that. The data center technologies are the thing that most people don't know from the LAN WAN side. So most people from the data center or from the LAN WAN know about layer 2 switching, they know about layer 3 switching, they know about spanning tree, they know about port channels, they know about what else is out there I'm trying to think of that they would need. They know about security. They most of the stuff right here can be done on a 6513, chassis switch. Most people have 6500s in their network, whether it's a 6509, 6513. It really depends on what you're running. Now, you take that same stuff, and the 7000 can do all that as well. The thing is, with the 7000, you can do a thing called fiber channel. The 7000, you could do a thing called FEX, F-E-X, or fabric extender. You can do a thing called virtual port channel. You can do a thing known as fabric path. Now, the thing with these are data center specific technologies. Oh, the other one that was out there is OTB, Overlay Transport Virtualization. So you could take all these technologies that are in the data center space and run them on the 7K, right? There are certain things like you can run this on the ASR platform, so the CSRs will run OTB. You can't run fiber channel on an ASR. Doesn't support it. So there are certain things that you have to have a Nexus 7000, Nexus 5000, Nexus 2000, whether you're dealing with the you're dealing with the 5596, the 7010, or you're dealing with like a 2248. Now I'm referring to older model devices. You guys might be familiar with newer stuff. I know there is newer stuff out there, but I haven't really played with that newer stuff yet. So you have that. Now that's the thing that sucks about Viral. It doesn't support these newer technologies. Viral also does not help when you're dealing with advanced service provider technologies like EVPN provider backbone bridging. It doesn't support it. Well, I shouldn't say it doesn't support it. It does support it, but it doesn't support the data plane. So you can get the control plane working, you can start advertising MAC addresses and all that good stuff, but the forwarding plane doesn't work. So you can't ping and trace route through the network to see where it's going. So there's some things that are out there that are lacking, would be probably the best way I can refer to it. So with that being said, there's some limitations to it. You could also learn wireless. You can download the virtual WILC off of Cisco's website and then install that in here, get it working, and then you can take a couple of access points. Actually, you guys can't see it, but behind the monitor that's actually sitting behind where my head sits, there's actually two 1131, I want to see GN? Actually, they're N series access points, so they'll support 802.11.N for RF. So I want to go learn wireless as well, but wireless is not my specialty, and I don't deal with it a lot at work. So actually, we sell a lot of Meraki where I'm at, so I'm going to be learning Meraki probably before I learn Cisco. So that's that. Now, that gives me a lot of capabilities, right? I'm sure you would agree. However, the problem with that being is some of the things that I want to study now, once I pass my CCIE, I can't do on here, like data center. So that leaves me in a tough spot where I want to teach data center. I think data center is pretty cool with the capabilities that you get. The drawback to it is it doesn't really give me that leverage. So I'm still kind of up in the air as to which direction I'm going to go in. I'd like to teach data center, but that would be kind of a hard thing to do in order. I mean, I could like do a lot of whiteboarding and explain how FEX works and how fabric path and other technologies work. That'd be great. But one thing that I noticed about this channel is you guys like it when I do demos. That's where it seems like the most hits I get are on the demo videos. But that's why it's also one of the harder things to zero in on, because at the end of the day, that's the core piece that it's hard to. That's why I asked what you guys wanted to see, and data center would be great. I'd like to do collaboration, but again, collaboration is very intensive. There's you literally I could spend 2 years. And the reason I say it this way is because I have a friend that does collaboration for another company, and he's really good at it. Like, he works at the enterprise level. He does voice, video, instant messaging, like Cisco's Jabber. He does, the IP phones, the soft phones. He does everything for that company's UC. He does. And the guy's phenomenal at it. I mean, he makes really good money. Now, he has a CCIE in collaboration. That's what he does. He's also got a CCIE in voice. He took both tests, and he passed them both on his first shot. So he's very, very good at what he does. And I quite frankly can't hold a candle to him when it comes to collaboration. One, I don't do it every day. Two, I'd have to sit there and it would take a really long time to learn it. So that's part of the reason why I'm not apprehensive or I don't fear it, but it's one of those things where I'm like, not sure if I really want to put the time and effort into it right now. But with that being said, I'm still kind of up in the air as to which direction I'm going to move in first. I have a couple of issues I have on the professional side that I need to get ironed out, and then once I have those ironed out and I decide which direction I'm going to go, I'll let you guys know. But that's why I'm doing these videos right here. It's kind of like a little miniature update as well as I cover some other things. So enough talk about that. Let's focus on how do I get certain things to work. Now you might think to yourself, okay, let's say for instance I spin up this Windows 7 box right here that I have. This guy right here, he's running, and the nice thing about this is I can connect 10 NICs, 10 vNICs to a single virtual machine and connect each NIC into a different port group. Now, the port group are actually these guys down here. This is a port group, this is a port group, this is a port group, and none of them are VLANs. So let me actually break this down and show you some stuff here. Let me click on the host, click on, and let me wipe the screen. I'll go to configuration and let me click on networking. Okay. So what I mean by none of these guys have, well, some of them have VLANs, and the reason they have a VLAN is because of the fact that I want to do traffic separation in the network, and I'll explain to you how that actually works. So this gray thing here in the middle, this is the vSwitch. And the vSwitch, everything on the left side here, so let me pull up my pen pad real quick. Everything from this side this way is the virtual world. Everything on this side and over is the physical world. So this guy right here is the actual physical adapter. So this is VMNIC 0. And this guy right here actually connects up to my 2950 Cisco switch on port 19, I believe. So if I was to click on this guy right here, it would actually show me CDP-wise who I'm connected to. So it would tell me I'm connected here, and then some of the stats on this switch, which is kind of nice because then I know where I'm connected. What I haven't done on this port is I haven't made it a trunk port. So all these VLANs that you see right here, if they try to leave and go up the vSwitch and out this way, they won't be able to, because this guy isn't listening for .1Q trunking, so he's not going to listen to them. In order for you to take your traffic and separate it per VLAN and be able to route it over your connection, you need to have it trunking. Now, let me explain something to you guys real quick when it comes to how the... let me flip over to black real quick. Let me break down how this actually works. So, let me draw out a ESXi server, right? Now, I'm not an artist by any stretch of the imagination, but just kind of go with it if you would. So, let me draw a port group here, a port group here, and a port group here. This one's going to be a little bit bigger. It's going to have more virtual machines inside of it. This is the vSwitch, right? And this is one physical uplink. Now the idea here is with the vSwitch, is that these port groups, so let's say this is the management on VLAN, let's say VLAN 1. This guy here is going to be SAN. So it connects out to your storage area network. This is VLAN 100. This is going to be the prod network, and this is going to be VLAN 10. Well, actually, let's say 16 for the sake of argument, because I meant to draw a 10, but it turned out like a 6. Now, these guys all have connections to here, right? Now, that doesn't mean that there's just one connection here. They're all mapped to this guy here. But what this simply means is if you look right here, for every the port group maps to the vSwitch, and what that actually ends up doing is it creates there's a logical connection here, and for every virtual machine that you connect, actually, as you can see here, this happens, and this happens. Now, and you also make a mapping here. Now, what the vSwitch will actually do is, as long as there's a physical switch out here, we'll say there's a Nexus 7000. Okay, there's a 7K sitting against this switch, or on this connection right here, and this guy right here, we'll say this is 10 gig fiber. Okay. Now, what will end up happening here, as long as this guy here is a .1Q trunk, as long as he's a .1Q trunk, and you send all of your management traffic out to him, as soon as it hits the trunk, it's going to be tagged with the VLAN ID of 1. Now, the Nexus 7000 series switch, not an expert on Nexus, so I'm going on here on a limb, we'll see that come in as VLAN 1 and be able to place it in that particular MAC address table, that spanning tree instance, that broadcast domain. Now, if SAN traffic has to get sent, then he's VLAN 100. He gets sent out that same port, but because of the fact that he gets a VLAN ID of 100, and this guy's here is listening for 100, so we have 100 on this side, we have 100 on this side. What ends up happening is that traffic goes out, he's tagged VLAN 100, so your management traffic and your storage area network traffic, so your storage traffic, all that is completely separated. One cable. Same thing with VLAN 16 here for prod. You have VLAN 16 here, you have 16 here, you have 16 here. What ends up happening is as traffic comes out here, regardless of how many devices are on in that port group, that goes out here, it's tagged with 16, the Nexus 7000 receives 16, and then he's able to forward it out. Now, and the cool thing about this, it's one cable. One cable. Okay, I'm sure you guys are getting the point here. The cool thing about this is the traffic is all separated. So you have, in this pool right here, you have VLAN 1. In this pool here, you have VLAN 100. And this pool right here, you have VLAN 16. So all the traffic is going across the same wire. Now, in my environment, I don't have it set up that way. In my environment, if we were to clear the screen off, we have a vSwitch here. And we have a single connection here. And this will be my 2950 switch. And then we have another connection here, and this is going to be I have a Dell desktop here, right? A Dell. I happen to be a Dell fan. So basically what we end up having here, this is going to be a one physical connection. I'm just going to put 1P, and this is one physical connection. This guy right here is a 100 meg link. This guy right here is a 1 gig link. Now what ends up happening here is on here, I'm actually taking a platform called StarWind software. What this does is it takes 1 terabyte of hard drive space, HDD, and what it does is it virtualizes it into 2 by 500 gigabyte drives. What I'm able to do with that is I can take these two drives, and these guys are sitting on the 10.1.1.0/24 network. There's a physical wire connecting this Dell switch or this Dell computer to my ESXi server. This is how my storage is set up. So I have a port group. So I have all these vSwitches right here. So the vSwitch, I'm just going to draw this vSwitch right here. This guy connects up here to this guy, and I have one itty bitty guy here. So we have all of these. We have a bunch of virtual machines sitting here, and they all connect to this vSwitch, like so, right? vSwitch sits right here. I have this connection here, and I have this connection here. What these do right here, this is for my management and just normal connectivity off the 192.168.1.0/24 network. Down here, this is the 10.1/24 network. What I'm able to do with this is I'm able to separate the traffic between the two. Now, what I will do is I will flip over to here, and I will go down to storage adapters, and you'll see that I have one connection here. If I go back to networking and then scroll down a little bit, you'll see what I mean. Right here. 10.1.2. Now, what I do here is I have this situated. Now, what I've actually done is the vSwitch is actually, this is incorrectly drawn. I actually have to draw it like this. My host sits up like this. I have a vSwitch here and a port group, and then I have a physical connection here. I have another vSwitch. Now notice the separation between the two. Anytime you create a new vSwitch, you actually create a new new, what's a good way to, if you have two switches in your network and they're not stacked together like a 3750 or like a 6500 or something like that, they're standalone. So that's what you can figure. This would be switch 1, this is switch 2, and what you name this guy here is I named this guy's management. This guy here is storage. Now, what's actually kind of funny is, I'll just put SAN for short. So that's my SAN connectivity. He also has another physical port. So what I do is on my iSCSI software adapter, I map my iSCSI software adapter to this physical port so that I can receive SAN traffic. Now let me show you something really cool. If I go to my storage adapter, you'll see that. I have my storage adapter. If I click on paths, it tells me where it's going, right? Clear this off real quick. So it tells me my path. If I click on properties and I go to network configuration, I'm mapped storage vSwitch1, VMK1, and I'm good to go, right? Now if I go down here, it's a full duplex 1 gig connection. Now what I do is I go up here to storage, I go to add storage, and then I go in there and I add LUN for iSCSI. So if you go to add storage, I click right here for disk LUN, and then I click on next. Nothing's there right now. If there was something there, it would actually say loading in kind of like a transparent gray, and you'd see the dots going, back and forth trying to load it. So that's how that works. So then I have my StarWind software, my iSCSI adapters, I got my two 500 gig drives. Everybody's happy. So that's what I do there. That's how I get my storage. And if I go here to summary, the data store looks like a physically connected storage capacity. So does SAN 1 and SAN 2. That's the thing about block level storage when you're dealing with SCSI, or I should say iSCSI, fiber channel, and I believe fiber channel over Ethernet. You actually are able to take a SAN and you're able to make that remote storage look like it's directly connected to you. So that gives you that directly attached storage like appearance. And then the host, so this local ESXi server here, formats that drive as VMFS, so virtual machine file system, and I currently run version 5. You could also run NFS, which NFS is actually it's a partition that or a file that you advertise via NFS to somebody. So you have to point ESXi to the destination plus the folder. And once you've done that, you have to give the folder permissions as to who can talk to it. Once you've done that, then you can go in there and the local file NFS server, so whatever device is serving up that storage to you has to format it as NFS and is in charge of the delivery of that. So if you're in a Windows environment and you go in there and you click on Map Network Drive, that's NFS. If you're in a storage environment and you have a EMC JBOD, or just a bunch of disks, or a storage area network, a bunch of spinning disks, and you connect into that guy with fiber channel, and you run say iSCSI, or if you run fiber channel between the two, and you have your worldwide name and I'm more familiar with SCSI, so I'll say the initiator is the server, the target is the storage array. Excuse me. So what you would do is you get that piece in play, and then you'd be able to talk to the storage array. The storage array, the reads and writes are going across that cable. That's why storage area networks have inherently high-speed data, so that you can have really high bandwidth links, 10, 40, 100 gig, so you can do that. That's how I have my server set up so that I can remotely log in. So I don't have to have any servers installed or any virtual machines installed locally to the disk. So in the event that, for instance, I have to rebuild the server for whatever reason, if I power off my Windows desktop, I can then go in and power down the virtual machines locally here on the server. Once I have the virtual machines powered down, I can then disconnect the storage from the server. I can reboot it, bring it back up, reattach myself to the server, to the storage array, do a scan of it. I'll relearn those LUNs, or logical unit numbers. Basically, a LUN is just a hard drive at the end of the day. And then once I have that in place, then I can say I can learn it. Well, actually, what will end up happening if I was to disconnect the storage before I was to power off or power down the server, all these devices would show up in italicized, so the text would actually look slanted towards the right, and in parentheses it would say inaccessible, meaning that the storage that virtual machine is stored on is inaccessible. So to answer your question, that there is a question. Yes, you can run over 100 meg connection if you want to do it. Just remember, it's going to be very, very slow. Your performance is going to be extremely hampered, or degraded would be a better way of referring to it, if you do that. I prefer to use a gig connection with 7200 RPM spinning disks. That's what I've got available to me at home. That's what I run with. So that just gives you an idea of how I go about doing that. So one of the other things you have to learn about VMware when you're dealing with it is you have to understand the network connectivity. It took me a long time to get a firm understanding of the vSphere networking. So this is just on the standard switch. I'm not going to dive into it in this video, but we haven't even talked about distributed switches inside a vCenter server. So, and I will be doing that later on, and I can do another video on distributed switching. But at this point in time, I'm not going to be able to do that. Now, one of the things I want to talk to you real quick about is what they call an internal-only switch. Now, an internal-only switch basically means that you create a vSwitch that doesn't have any physical adapters associated to it. Now, by doing that, you actually completely isolate that switch to talk to just the virtual machines that are located on that vSwitch. Now, by doing that, whenever you create a vSwitch, you automatically create a VM port group. And the VM port group is actually where you place the virtual machine vNICs inside of. If you don't have a virtual machine port group, I'm just going to slide this out. It's like you have a switch with no physical Ethernet ports on it. A switch with no Ethernet ports. And this is more applicable, for instance, if you have a 6880 chassis switch. You know, the newer boxes that are able to do FEX with the instant access switches. Let me draw one out real quick. What they do is they've gone away from the fixed 24 port, line cards that are automatically plugged in like this. What they've gone to is more of a modular approach where they do 16 port blocks, right? So you'll have the 16 port block, and I'm just going to draw about just a bunch of random circles. This is simulating a 16 port module. So you plug a 16 port module in, and you plug your cables into it. Now, okay, you've reached the capacity of your port density, so you need to go out to Cisco and say, I need another, and you have, I believe it's 2 wide, so I think you get 32 ports wide. So you go out and you order another module. So you add this in, and you reach capacity. You go out to Cisco and you order another one. And just for kicks and giggles, we're going to go 3 wide. And then you add another one. So now you're at 48 ports of connectivity, right? Great. So you've reached capacity. Everybody's happy. Now, the drawback to that is this is where it comes into play where if you don't have a module, so let's say, for instance, this line card number 3, in this case, you've got 3 open slots, but you've got like a slot cover on it. So you can't see into the switch. If you were to poke at it, there would be nothing to go into. It's like a metal bracket or a metal face that goes on the front of this. Now, by doing that, you won't be able to have anything there. That's the same concept of having a vSwitch with no port group associated to it. There's nowhere for you to place logically. So in software, that particular vNIC into that particular port group. So when you go to create a virtual machine, and I'll show you what this looks like right now. I'm going to clean up the screen real quick. Let me go to Win 7 here, and I'm going to click on Edit Settings. Now, as you can see right now, I have one network adapter. I have the management. So I just click on this guy. It's right here. So the network connection is as such. Now, what I can do is I can manually change the network label. The network label is referring to the port group name. So if I was to click this down arrow, you see I have a bunch of different port group labels. So if I was to put this in DMZ1, I'm not going to because I'd lose connection to it. I could put that into that port group. That port group can't go anywhere. It's completely isolated from everything else except for any other virtual machines that would be inside of that port group. The point of that is like having a switch that doesn't physically connect to another switch or the internet or a router or what have you. The benefit to that, though, is, for instance, let's say, and I'm going to cancel out on that and cancel here. The benefit to that, though, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is, let's say, for instance, you have a network that you want to do some testing on. So, for instance, when I go to start doing my Microsoft studies, one of the things that I want to do is I actually want to go in and I want to set up to where I can have my host, and I can have a dedicated vSwitch. We'll say switch 4, and I can have all of my Windows servers. So I can have, let's say 8 by, server 2012 R2, right? I can have 8 servers, and I can have like four desktop machines, desktop, right? They don't connect to anything. But what I would end up doing is I would actually add 2 VNICs to each of these devices. So that one VNIC would go plug into this guy, one VNIC would plug into the management, so vSwitch 0. And what that allowed me to do, it would allow me to remotely log in to the server from my computer that I'm recording on from, and then I'd be able to get in there, or I could have a separate device inside of this guy that I would be able to manage all of them from. So let's say, for instance, I have vSwitch 1 that also is mapped to, well, actually, no, that would not work. So let me actually take that out real quick. Let me go to a thin eraser. So let me actually erase that. What I would actually probably end up doing here is I would actually probably go in here and do something like this. Let me actually erase that completely here. So I'm thinking about the logical understanding of this as I'm explaining this to you, so it makes sense. What I would actually do is I would actually have one of these desktop computers. One of them would be admin, right? And then I would have a network adapter plugged into vSwitch 0 that I could log into it remotely, and I'd be able to log in and say, okay, I want to manage all of the servers from that device. So I'd be able to remote, so kind of like a jump box. So a lot of the companies I do work for at my company, because I work for a partner, I work with a lot of customers. So I end up having to remote into their network. So I VPN to their network. I do a remote desktop connection to one of their server that they've got, and then from there I'm able to go for wherever I need to in the network. So we install whatever we need on their virtual machine, and then we go from there. That's the same kind of concept here. So I'd be able to do, remote desktop connection to remote desktop connection to remote desktop connection. So it's a lot of, stepping stones, but that's how I set things up. Now, by doing that, it allows me to completely separate the traffic here. Now, one of the other cool things about this is it allows me also to go in here and say, all right, what are we going to plan on doing with this? So do we want to have it just set up to where we have a bunch of connectivity? Is there an actual end goal in mind with this? It really depends on your situation, what you're trying to do. Now, at the same point in time, one of the things that I want to do is I want to make sure that as I'm going through and setting stuff up, I want to make sure that I have a scalable method in place. So what that means is, let's say, for instance, I want to test out let's say we have a box here that connects down to another box, that connects down to another box, that connects down to another box, that connects down to the internet. So I could have my Win 7 computer connect into a vSwitch. So all these lines right here are just a vSwitch. Or a port group, I should say. It's a port group. That connects to say, ASA. Right? Connects to an ASA. So I'm testing the theory. How do I do content filtering? I want to prevent certain types of web traffic from getting on. I'm testing URL filtering. So I would come up here, and then this guy would connect to a router. We'll say router 1. This guy connects up to, let's say, another ASA. And then eventually that ASA has a port in the management port group, and then I want to go out. So let's say this port group right here is going to be, inside. This guy right here is, the port group of outside. This port group right here is known as, we'll say, outside. I can have outside 1, and I can have outside 2, depending on the situation. For every unique name, it's a different port group, so it would be different broadcast domain. So this way here, when ASA would act as, so I would be doing, say, NAT inside and NAT outside, and I'd be doing, doing something like that, and then I can come up here, I can, this guy right here, this router would act as like, maybe as an internet, would be simulating the internet for these two connections right here, to where maybe this is a site-to-site VPN, and then this is all happening inside of my virtual environment. That's the power of how this works. That's why I wanted to give you an example of how that would all come to play. So everything I've talked about so far, I'm kind of bringing it into retrospect so you guys can understand where I'm coming from. So I could do that, and then this guy would be have a port group in management. This guy might be, say, the outside interface, and he could be doing that, for instance. And then so this guy here, so this lonely remote desktop connection at a branch office needs to be able to get out to the internet, but only over a secure VPN that this ASA is doing packet filtering on. Whatever. And then we could do that. So that gives you the capability to go in here and really test things out. You could do the same thing with, if you needed to learn, like, for instance, you needed to learn Riverbed or F5. Now, there's a lot of virtual machines out there nowadays that you can play with. So you can literally download any appliance, put it inside of ESXi, get it running, make sure you have a couple ports in the right port groups, and then away you go. Now, I don't have a demo to show you how this would work. I'm just giving you an example of what you could do, and that's how I do it. Now, the other thing you could do as well is you can take, like, let's say these CSRs right here. Right? These CSRs all connect into the vSwitch 1 or vSwitch 0, and they all have a port in the management port group, right? So they're all in management. By default, CSR 1000Vs come with 3 gig interfaces, and then you can put whatever port group you want. So usually I have one port group in, or one physical interface inside, or I should say one logical interface in the management port group. Then I have another vSwitch or another port group that I use that connects down to a maybe as some other capability, whatever I got going on. Now, the only drawback to this is, let's say you have vSwitch 0, right? And you have, if you think you have an understanding about this, let me clarify a couple things. Now, let's say we have another vSwitch down here. So this is vSwitch 1, this is vSwitch 2. If you have a port group here, let's say this is management. Let's say this another port group here is called test. You have another port group here called dev. You have a port group here located out of switch 2. Let's say this is, prod. The drawback to this is management, test, and dev might be in different port groups. If they all have the same VLAN, it's all the same broadcast domain. So what that means is, if you want the management device to be able to talk to everybody else, you have to make sure that the VLAN ID on this particular switch, VLAN ID, is set to 4095. By doing this, you allow every virtual machine to talk to every other virtual machine. If you don't do that, they won't be able to talk to each other. These port groups are attached to the same vSwitch. Essentially, if you don't put them in different VLANs, by putting them in different VLANs, they're not able to talk to each other without having to leave this, without having to, let's say this guy connects off to a router, which in reality it does. These guys all have to be able to connect out here to talk. So let's say this guy is VLAN 1, this guy's 10, this guy's 12, this guy's 20. So this guy right here is a trunk, right? It's a trunk. As long as this router is listening for VLAN or encapsulated traffic from each one of these port groups, they'll have to actually leave ESXi to come back to ESXi to talk to the other port group. If they're all in the same VLAN, which in all of my cases, most of mine are, then they would have to be VLAN. This would be VLAN 1. This would be VLAN 1. This would be VLAN 1. They'd all be talking to each other. But the thing is, what's interesting about that is you can have the same physical uplink mapped to two different vSwitches. So this will be uplink 1, if we have this connection here connecting outbound, this would be uplink 2. Two physically different connections. So the idea here is the way that I set mine up, and actually let me blow this away real quick. Grab the mouse. Is if you notice here, I have VLAN 12 and 23, and I have a port group. If there is no VLAN ID associated to it, now if you notice right here it says VLAN ID all 4095, that means that if there's no VLAN ID associated to the port group, that means that it's in VLAN 0 by default. VLAN 0 meaning it's the native VLAN, or it's untagged, so it's the native VLAN essentially. Because the way that Cisco does it, if a Cisco switch receives an untagged, no VLAN ID in the .1Q header, it automatically assumes that it's the native VLAN. It's going to place it in VLAN 1. So that's why I say, if you want to get traffic separation, you need to specify a VLAN ID in the port group. That will require the vSphere switch to separate the traffic per tag, and that's where that will take care of that. So now I have it set up here to where it's all VLAN, so they should be able to talk to each other on all that. Which, even if you do set up different VLANs, if they're all attached to the same vSwitch, they're still all going to be able to talk to each other. So it's only when they're trying to leave, if they're on different vSwitches, that's when you have to leave the network to come back. If they're all attached to the same vSwitch, it's like having different ports and different VLANs, but they're still going to be able to talk. They're still going to be able to talk to each other because even though the VLAN ID, the VLAN in this case only pertains to traffic leaving the vSwitch. If it's local to the box, it doesn't matter. So at least in my thing, and the reason why I say that is because I have I've tested several CSR 1000Vs and iOS-V routers that have different encapsulations, but they're still able to talk to each other because you have this right here in place. This is all 4095, which means that they're going to switch locally between all the VLANs. It's when you get into things like I can't scroll when I've got my pen pad pulled up. But even up here, if I had a virtual machine in this guy and one in here, I'd still be able to ping it because I'm exchanging VLAN ID. If this was disabled, they would not be able to talk to each other. It's when you go into a different vSwitch is when you completely cut that off regardless of what's going on, because you have to leave the vSwitch to come in on, because it's a different physical port. So I hope that makes sense. But that's how it breaks down. So at the end of the day, that's how I go through about doing things and how I've been able to do that. Now there's a lot of learning that comes in that's involved with that. So if you're going through your prep or something like that, or you want to go into some details, or you want to try some stuff out, there's been a lot of trial and error. So if you guys have any questions for me, or you'd like to know more about it, please let me know. One of the enhancements, though, that I like about vSphere that's not well known is if you click on the host and you go down to configuration, and you go down to advanced settings, if you click on the mem part right down here, one of the things you're going to want to do is you're going to want to set this guy right here to 0. By doing this, you actually enable the ESXi server to not allocate separate memory-specific requirements per virtual machine. What I mean by that is if you have 25 CSRs, I cannot type, or I'm sorry, I cannot write for nothing. So you click on the memory tab, you're taking care of allocation guest large page, and you want to make it a 0. You have 25 CSR routers, and you've given them all 2 gigs of RAM. What that basically means is this is set to 1 right here. What you're doing is you're allocating 25 times 2 gigs, so 50 gigs of RAM. By setting this to 0, what you do is any CSRs that can share the same memory allocation pages, it will, without having to allocate it a separate memory allocation page. So instead of having to have a 2 gig block here, a 2 gig block here, a 2 gig block here, all the way through 25, you'd actually be able to keep that down to, let's say, 25 CSRs use the same, for the most part, the same memory allocation range. But let's say, for instance, each one needs to go out of scope a little bit per virtual machine, and so that might be an extra 4 or 5 gig, depending on your situation. CSRs are inherently resource intensive. That's just how it goes. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't make much of a difference. That's an enhancement I would recommend you guys know as you're going through. It definitely will help. I'm not sure how much it will help, depending on your platform. It could be less significant than you might think, but that's okay. So that's where I'm at with that. So that's one of the questions that was asked, and I wanted to provide an answer for that. I am working on other projects at the same point in time, so that I do want to let you guys know that's what's going on. At this point in time, I'm not going to be doing any real heavy series work until I'm done with my CCIE. And I will announce pass or fail how that goes. Hopefully I'll be announcing a pass here very soon. I actually had a friend of mine take it yesterday, and I'm very, very happy to say that a friend of mine, George, passed his lab on his first attempt. So I'm very, very happy that I'm happy for him that he passed. In the past, I'll say 2, 3, maybe even 4 weeks. Didn't keep track of it. Me, him, and another friend of ours who were all studying for our CCIEs were studying in a little study group where we'd get together and we'd lab, and test out different things, and we'd discuss different situations. And if we were running into a hiccup, we would talk about it. And a lot of times it was just, we were just being quiet on the call. It's a video call. We could see each other working and going through different things, and it was a mutual understanding of why we were there. So he took his lab yesterday, and he knocked it out of the park. So I'm extremely happy to hear him say that, and hopefully I will be able to do the same here very, very soon. I won't tell you exactly when, but it'll be very, 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 very soon. And when I do, I'm expecting a pass. Honestly, I've been studying my butt off, and I'm actually getting tired of preparing for the CCIE. Now it's almost 6 months since my first attempt. It's been almost 4 months since my second attempt. I'm feeling very, very good about my next attempt. I've put a lot of time and effort into it, and I think I've just lost my webcam. Oh, you know why? I know why. Pardon me while I pause. Okay, fixed that problem. So anyway, that's pretty much where it's at with that. So I'm very, very happy to see that he was able to knock his lab out on his first shot. I know how hard that can be for some people. That's pretty much what's going on. I hope that answers some of your questions on how I have things set up and how I go about doing it. There is a question, and I just heard the ding in my ear. How do you set up StarWind? Actually, that's a very, very good question. I can actually show you really quickly how that works. So with StarWind software, it's actually a free download, or it was last time I tried it. It was a free download. Now with StarWind software, it gives you the capability of taking it, and from the top down here real quick, it's actually very, very simple. You would, at this point right here, you would click on Connect. And what that would allow you to do is it would allow you to connect to the local server, and then here you would add a device and add a target. And the adding the target part is right here. This is my target, so this is what I will get when I connect to the SAN from ESXi. I create a device, and basically from there I'm able to allocate. I can pick which drive I want StarWind to go talk to, and by doing that I can go in here and I can say how much space I want to allocate to it, and then it's going to be a flat device, and then I can say once it's configured I can go ahead and push that out towards my ESXi server, and then I can have 2 by 500 gigabyte drives, so that I can have a terabyte of storage on my ESXi server. And then if I ever need to worry about rebooting my server or reinstalling something, or something's going south and I need to reboot it, what have you, I can just simply disconnect the storage, and when I come back I don't have to rebuild anything. Everything's stored on another computer, everything's good to go. And same thing with this Windows server. If something does go south, I can simply, for Windows updates or something like that pops up, I can simply go to this box here, power the server, my iSCSI target down, and then I can reinstall my Windows updates and go from there. So that's the general idea. So I hope that answers all of your questions. I like to be as thorough as I can. If you have any questions, throw them in the comments below, and I will try to get to them as quickly as I can be. As that has been said, I am also in the process of putting together a game plan for a lot of new content. But I'm waiting until after I'm done with my test, and once I'm done with my test, I will be much more able to figure that out. I'm really way more focused on passing my lab than I am producing more content or learning new technologies. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. So, as I've said in several videos in the past, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.